Evolutionists claim that dinosaurs and human beings never coexisted. They tell us that dinosaurs and human beings were separated by 65 million years of evolution. What they seem to ignore are the Acambaro figures. Dated to over 4,500 years, these statuettes depict dinosaurs of all sorts. They even depict humans using dinosaurs as beasts of burden. If dinosaurs died out 65 million years ago, there is no way this civilization could have had any knowledge of dinosaurs whatsoever. The most obvious explanation is that these people did, in fact, live with dinosaurs in the recent past. The world is young, and the evolutionary view is wrong. So what's with all these supposed scientists ignoring the evidence yet again? I had to investigate. According to his official story, in July 1944, a German hardware merchant named Waldemar Juisrud was riding his horse on the lower slope of El Toro Mountain in Acambaro, Mexico, when he discovered some partially exposed stones and a ceramic object half buried in the dirt. He immediately realized that these pieces were unlike any objects from any known Mesoamerican culture. Juisrud hired a Mexican farmer, Odilon Tinajero, to dig in the area where the ceramic figurines were found and bring him any other similar objects, paying him 1 peso apiece. Tinajero quickly returned with a wheelbarrow full of ceramic pottery, the beginning of a collection that quickly grew into thousands of pieces. This caused Juisrud to convert his mansion into a museum and to eventually resort to sleeping in the bathtub. Among the collection of artifacts were objects that had cultural connections with the Egyptians and Sumerians, among other distant cultures. Most significant, however, were sculptures of various animals resembling different species of dinosaurs, including some that depicted humans and dinosaurs interacting. In 1947, Juisrud published his booklet, Enigmas del Pasado, and enjoyed a few newspapers and magazines in Mexico briefly reporting on the discovery. Noting that the Acambaro region is rich in genuine prehistoric objects, in 1952, the Amarant Foundation sent an archaeologist named Charles Dipeso to study the artifacts and their authenticity. After examining Juisrud's collection, Dipeso wrote, "None of the specimens were marred by patination, nor did they possess the surface coating of soluble salts characteristic of objects of more certain antiquity coming from the same area. Examination showed the edges of the depressions forming eyes, mouths, or scales to be sharp and new. No dirt was packed into any of the crevices. Further, none of the broken surfaces were worn smooth. In the entire collection of 32,000 specimens, no shovel, mattock, or pick marks were noted. This would indicate that the excavators possessed a digging technique exceeding anything known to professional archaeologists, or that they knew precisely where to dig." Dipeso also reported that he witnessed the excavation of a delicate, unbroken clay pipe whose bowl and stem were unclogged with dirt. All of this indicated that the pieces were recently manufactured. In the summer of 1955, Charles Hapgood, the professor of history and anthropology at Keene State College of the University of New Hampshire, conducted a very detailed investigation of the collection. He had already distinguished himself as the author of a number of books furthering his polar shift proposal and ideas on lost civilizations. He hypothesized that the ancient Acambaro sculptors were a pre-Ice Age civilization that not only may have been ancestral to all American cultures, but to all cultures around the globe. Hapgood argued that as the figurines were discovered in sandy soil, waterborne salts would have drained away before a patina could form. He also claimed that an ancient culture deliberately buried the artifacts in caches, which enabled Tinajero to use long knives to probe for each cache and then carefully excavate them through a process of undermining. Dipeso witnessed 2 days of an excavation by Tinajero and his son beneath a prehistoric ruin which contained genuine artifacts. He saw none of the care in digging which Hapgood had described, noting that the two actually damaged many genuine objects of known cultures with no concern. Dipeso also noted that the fill had intruded a sterile red layer of earth below the black topsoil. In backfilling the tunnel, they mixed this sterile red earth with the black earth. The tracing of their original excavation was, as a result, a simple task. This bit of evidence, plus the presence of some fresh animal manure in the tunnel fill, offered proof enough that the material had been recently planted. Hapgood explained what Dipeso witnessed by claiming that Tinajero had reburied his cache from an earlier dig in order to keep local children out of it. In that case, why Tinajero had to dig for over a day before recovering the cache has yet to be explained. On another occasion, Dipeso observed from a distance without announcing his presence. He observed no digging, but noted that Tinajero's home just a few hundred feet away was very busy. At noon that day, Tinajero reported to Juisrud that he had been excavating all morning and had found 30 more pieces. In 1968, Charles Hapgood returned to Acambaro with Earl Stanley Gardner, whose detective mysteries had become the basis for the Perry Mason television show. Having been a forensic pathologist and district attorney for the city of Los Angeles for over 20 years, he examined the collection and, according to Hapgood, said that if a group of fakers had made all the pieces, their style would be recognizable on the whole collection. However, in 1969, Gardner reported that a group of artisans maintained a thriving industry of manufacturing figurines and then selling them to tourists as excavated artifacts only 50 miles away. Furthermore, the Acambaro figurines were disconnected in style and appearance from the genuine artifacts found in the area, and their sheer variety in influence and style points to a modern origin. For example, several of the artifacts appear to imitate ancient Egyptian forms. Dipeso explained that the National Museum in Mexico City houses an extensive Egyptian collection, and that Mexico City is readily accessible from Acambaro by train, meaning that the hoaxers could have gotten their ideas from the local cinema, comic books, newspapers, or books from the local library. That same year, Hapgood acquired specimens for carbon-14 testing and submitted the samples to the Laboratory of Isotopes Incorporated in New Jersey. The radiocarbon dates ranged from 1110 BC to 4500 BC, which would make the collection the oldest in the Western Hemisphere. But the 34-year range of dates does not instill confidence in the results. Such a range, however, is not surprising since these radiocarbon measurements were taken in 1968 before significant advances in radiocarbon dating methods in the 1970s. In 1972, Froelich Rainey, the director of the Pennsylvania Museum, was given 3 samples for thermoluminescent dating. The Masca lab obtained thermoluminescent dates of up to 2700 BC. In 1976, Gary Carriveau and Mark Hahn at the University of Pennsylvania attempted to date 20 Acambaro figures using thermoluminescence dating. They found that the figures had been fired at temperatures between 4500 degrees and 650 degrees Celsius. However, all of the samples failed the Plateau Test. The Plateau Test is conducted by irradiating a sample to find the maximum amount of radiation it can absorb, known as a plateau. Since different artifacts all have their own mineral composition, this amount can vary greatly. If no plateau is found, then the results cannot be attributed to normal thermoluminescence due to natural radioactive decay. From their paper, a random sampling of 20 figurines from this collection was tested for a plateau. Not one passed this essential test. The two then analyzed samples from 1969. After thermoluminescence dating that year, there should have been no thermoluminescence left. As it happened, when measured in 1973, the signal was far too high to be natural thermoluminescence. Using signal regeneration, the team determined the amount of accumulated thermoluminescence that had regenerated in the 50 months since the test in 1969, giving a 1:8 ratio for the original signal. This meant that the figurines were last baked roughly 400 months before their 1969 testing, a few years before they were discovered. Assuming that many of the figures are genuine, supporters like Don Patton and Dennis Swift claim that each of the clay pieces had been skillfully sculpted and carefully decorated. Of the 20,000 figurines which are still in the collection, Patton claims 2,600 of them are dinosaurs. Yet these are the dinosaur samples which Patton displays and which Hapgood included in his book. Presumably the most convincing in the collection, yet they are so crude that they could just as well be interpreted as other creatures or be classified with the hundreds of figurines which Hapgood acknowledges to be fictitious creatures. In fact, to illustrate how skillfully sculpted they are, the figures you're looking at now are actually part of a clay art project for children between the ages of 3 and 11 and look more like actual dinosaurs. There are several reasons to doubt the authenticity of the Acambaro stones. Since Juisrud purchased most of the figurines directly from Tinajero without witnessing their excavation, he had to rely on Tinajero's honesty. The absence of a standard in situ archaeological study of the figurines leaves all claims to authenticity mired in hearsay. Whether or not the Acambaro figures are genuine, the circumstances and motives behind the parties associated with their discovery are undeniably suspicious. In investigating them, however, they are another example of how creationism taught me real science. If there's a creationist argument you think I should investigate, please comment below. It may become the basis for a future episode. In the meantime, subscribe and make sure you don't miss it.